Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast. For men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast. Well, hello, this is Deborah Johnson with you for another wonderful podcast episode today, another show. When naysayers say, you can't do that. How many of you have heard that before? I am sure everyone listening has heard this at some point in their life or another point. And it doesn't really stop when you're growing up as a kid into when you are even getting older. So I like to approach that subject today. It is a highly searched term. And as I put this out today, when naysayers say, you can't do that, we are at the beginning of another year. And when you are faced with some of this language and some of this self-talk, it really has an influence on how your year goes. So I thought that was a good subject. It's a highly searched term. When naysayers say, you can't do that. And so I thought it would be fun for us to approach today, that little subject. So let's kind of get going in on this. You might have heard that phrase, you can't do that, maybe from one of your parents or one of your siblings while growing up. You might still hear it from them. But then you start hearing it in school, and later you hear it at work, and even from colleagues. Now that phrase, it brings up that feeling of being scolded and reprimanded. Can you feel that? But you can't do that doesn't just relate to doing something wrong. It can make you feel like you're not good enough to attempt what's before you. You can't do that can apply to trying something new, to taking a risk, or even doing a task a little bit differently than everyone else. And what brought this in the forefront of my mind is a colleague of mine told me that she received this comment, you can't do that, when she was first putting together her one-woman music show. Now, granted, it's not easy to sell one-person shows, whether starring a woman or a man. But however, she ignored that advice and she proceeded to produce a very successful show. And if she had listened, she wouldn't be where she is today, happily living and working in New York. In fact, I put some links in with the articles that always accompany these podcasts. I put one of my shows in there because it is a one-woman show. And I want to approach a couple of reasons that people discourage you, because others will apply their own fears and failures to your situation. And maybe what you're attempting to do it's different than anyone else's methods. And maybe no one has done exactly what you wanted to do. It might be risky, and they're afraid of you failing. And your failure could also bring like a sales team or a company down, or it could cause embarrassment for friends and family. It just makes people not even want to take a risk for this. Now, one of the biggest examples of facing your fears with the jobs that no one wants to do is with one of my little favorite shows called Dirty Jobs. Have you heard of this with Mike Rowe? It's starting up again in 2022. And he's shown performing all these difficult, strange, disgusting, or messy occupational duties. And what makes the show so intriguing is to see Rowe in situations where most would never attempt. And his attempts and successes, all of which could have ended in some sort of failure, they were rewarded with 5 Emmy nominations. And when you combine Rowe's comic personality and actually his great speaking voice and bizarre jobs, you have an extremely entertaining show. Leaders and thought leaders don't always follow the normal path. And in this book, Blue Ocean Strategy, look at the article for the link to that. The authors, Kim and Mavborn, they suggest that the answer to competitive problems is to create a blue ocean or a brand new market for an innovative idea. And in redefining a new market, you come up against many naysayers, right? Especially if your method has not been done before. I have really attempted this quite a bit in my life. I know about this feeling. And with the rise of now non-fungible tokens, or those NFTs, this digital technology using blockchain, it's questioned by many as it's risky. That's a really good example of it. However, I think we will find many exploring using those NFTs in the future to negate that you can't do that philosophy. And you can already find fine art and collectibles using NFTs. Now, I've thought about this even in a little bit in some of my business and some of my products. And I have made the decision to not put out as many programs, and I do a certain number of live events as well, but I limit those because I'm a creator. I produce, create, think, write. And with a lot of the product, the intellectual product that I have, it's interesting to explore some of this, even with NFTs, with musicals. There's a lot to it, but if you're going to go in any direction, do your research, and then don't be afraid to go for it when you feel that, oh, you can't do that. You know, the moment somebody says that, I usually say, no, I can do that. So anyway, evaluate very, very carefully, though, because in anything that you do, whether it's investing or whether it's collectibles or whatever you do there, you have to at least do a lot of your own research and spend time doing that. So now let's talk about what to do when you fail, because you will. Failure happens, right? There's always a risk of failure when trying something new. There's always that risk. Well, how do you respond when you feel like you failed? Well, many make excuses or try to cover up for what should have been a successful venture. I've done this with certain programs I've planned to produce, where I've just canceled them with a lack of interest or a lack of signups. But if we continue to shove failures under those rugs, we won't learn from the mishaps or what is not happening. And I think the biggest thing we can learn from so-called failures is what not to do. It's really taught me what to do in my business. And there are very few experiences that should be called a total failure, as there's usually at least a little part of what happened that's redeemable and something very positive to build upon. You just have to look for that little nugget. In 1967, way back, Apollo 1 never launched because of a fire in the command module that killed the entire crew going to space and destroyed the module. And it took until 1969 with Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin on Apollo 11 to land on the moon. Now, there were test flights for other Apollo launches between those dates, but they had to keep fixing what caused the fire or caused damage and any other issues in order for those astronauts to safely land on the moon. If they quit after that one fire, they would have never found out. Now, an important note is that space travel doesn't stop because of accidents. Even the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, which was horrible in 2003, killing all 7 crew members when it re-entered the atmosphere, it didn't stop space travel. I mean, look at Elon Musk with SpaceX. They're offering commercial flights to both Earth and lunar orbit. And even with all the tests and trials, I guarantee there will be a certain amount of risk, right? Richard Branson and Virgin Galactic, they're offering tickets for future space flights. And I am sure they and their team have taken a step back to evaluate what goes wrong with every single flight. Each failure is an opportunity to build on what did work. And there are people who've actually already bought their tickets. They trust in that process. And we all need to do that as well. Well, there's a mindset of success, and I want to really focus on this. It's very important. Elon Musk quotes, "When something is important enough, you do it, even when the odds are not in your favor." And this takes a mindset to get beyond the feeling that you can't do that. If Henry Ford had listened to those naysayers, he would have never produced the automobile. People just thought we needed faster horses, not a noisy machine with wheels that sprouted out all of this gasoline. And in fact, Ford's first attempt was at the Detroit Automobile Company in 1899, and it failed. The automobiles were of a lower quality and higher price than he wanted. That was somewhat of a failure, but success came with the Model T in 1908 and Ford Motor Company when he was able to produce a simple and an easy to drive automobile. That was the key, simple. It was also affordable. Fail fast is a philosophy that values extensive testing and incremental development to determine whether an idea has value. There's a whole book on this, Fail Fast. I have the link in the article. It also seeks to take the stigma out of the word failure to build on what is working to succeed faster. Eric Ries, in that 2011 book, The Lean Startup, championed the fail fast term. It's worth reading and it's worth pursuing. Well, now let's talk about changing your language. This is very important as well, because I approach this in the book, The Summit. And the main protagonist, Mallory, which is an allegory, she had to change her language from "I can't" to "I can," and "I won't" to "I will." And as she did, her situation seemed to change and her eyes were opened to new possibilities. And this book, it's a realistic fantasy. I just happen to have a copy right here if you're watching the video. And so, but logic tells us that principle may not hold true in all situations. We know that. But I believe there is power in our words. And as you hear yourself speak affirmative phrases, you can look to the future with a hopeful and a positive attitude. And hope is one of the strongest emotions that we possess. And we can see how it's cycled through our history. I wrote an article and a podcast, a whole episode on historical cycles of hope. It's very encouraging. The character Mallory can't get to her summit without her little band, her little yellow band of hope that her guide gives her to wear on her right wrist. And when she loses it, she all but gives up her journey. Now, this simple principle of language and changing your language is so very powerful. Most couples and partners, they understand how important communication styles are with each other, especially if they've gone through a number of years. And you can see, I love the book, The 5 Languages of Love. It's been out a long time, but it's very, very applicable today. We don't pay much attention to our self-communication, though. It takes some time to write down your thoughts and then speak those thoughts aloud, and you'll discover the power of words in your life. And I would suggest you add "I can" and "I will" to your everyday language. Now, there's another principle that I approach in the summit, and that is journaling. And so, but when you go about doing a journal, stop to even read your words aloud. In fact, I put out things even on social media. I go back and read my journal. I don't always write a lot, but it's very, very powerful to read those words and to read my thoughts. And then I can change them a little bit if they're not saying exactly what I want to say. But it's very powerful to read those words. I'm thinking, sometimes I look back and think, did I write that? Wow. And that's a really positive affirmation. When someone says, "You can't do that," that kind of I get riled up when somebody tells me that. I usually think I'm going to figure out a way I can't. But there's usually always a way around things. And listen to what is not working and really evaluate it. Take time to do that. And I recently put out a meme on social media. Make sure you connect with me, Deborah.Johnson, at Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Deborah J. Johnson. But I put out a meme with a paragraph on how I spend time reflecting. Because as you reflect and pull back on things, you end up amplifying your effectiveness. And it's that principle, we think we need to do more, but we don't. We need to do less. But do less of the right things. And as you listen to those voices around, don't listen to them. Develop your own self-language that says, yes, I can do that. So I hope that's really encouraging to you today as you are facing this new year of 2022 as this is being produced. And as you look ahead, when naysayers, you can't do that, look for your own self-encouragement and your own time of saying, yes, I can do that. Thank you so much for joining me, Deborah Johnson. It is a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be with you every single week. And I love this, the podcast format. You can connect with me anytime on womenathalftime.com. Find me on social media, goalsforyourlife.com, Deborah Johnson Speaker, a number of websites, of course, my music website as well, DJ Works Music, but you can find me on social media. And I look forward to being with you next time. And I hope you join with me then and you share this episode, share this podcast with those around you to encourage them as well on their journey. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenathalftime.com.